Well, welcome to our series here on the real God. And we're talking about the sovereignty of God this week. And I certainly hope you made it to the weekend service. If not, you can certainly watch that online. It's up. And as you pause and begin to really contemplate who it is that we worship, God's sovereignty is such a powerful, overarching, and comforting attribute of God and doctrine. I mean, as I read through, all those titles, and as I gave an overview. He's above all things. He controls all things. He's before all things. I mean, the God of the Bible has no rivals, and yes, it's very, very narrow, but narrow only in the fact that we live in such a pluralistic society. And so, I just want to encourage you to don't gloss over that. To make sure you do that icebreaker and spend some time in groups of two or three where you really talk about maybe something that was really difficult and you thought it was the worst thing that happened in your life. And the fact of the matter is, you look back now and you realize God, in his sovereignty and kindness, really used it to bring about one of the best things in your life. I shared that, my wife, what a tragic situation to be married and have your husband run off with someone else, and when you're pregnant with twins, and it was just a horrendous thing. He meant it for evil, and yet, God is a redeemer and he's kind, and God meant it for good. And he used that, and out of that my wife came to Christ, and out of that, she had two wonderful little boys, and out of that I got to be her husband. I got to be a part of God's plan. And it's amazing how good and how kind and how powerful and all-knowing how the Lord orchestrates things. But it requires that we lean in. So, I want you to really make sure you do that icebreaker. And then just a word of warning on this one. As you go through the questions and you talk about some of those theological issues, will you covenant together not to argue? I mean, I know there's some people that are just, they want to pull out verses and, it's our responsibility, and, this is the way it is and this is what I was taught. Or other people, hey, God is absolutely sovereign. His purposes can't be thwarted. And this is what it means. And everyone, predestination kind of over the top. Our goal is the goal of Scripture. And just let me just repeat, when the Apostle Paul wrote about the sovereignty of God and the responsibility of man, and he talked about the nation of Israel, when he got to the end of that, Romans 9, 10, 11, he broke out in praise. And he said, oh, the depth of both the wisdom and the knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his ways, and his paths or his judgments beyond finding out. And so I think what he's really saying is, we can't figure this one out, but there's two things we do know are true. He really is in control. His purposes won't be thwarted. There is comfort. The world's not out of control. Now, it may feel and be out of your control, but it's not out of his. And so our application, as you share and, as you talk about the responsibility of man, the sovereignty of God, our response, make sure that time that you share is about surrender. It's bowing to his sovereignty, not arguing how much or how little that we have. It's refusing not to worry. It's, what does it look like for your group? I mean, this is third or fourth time you guys are together. What's it look like to not worry, to trust God, to not just intellectually agree that he's sovereign, but to believe it to the point right now what you're facing. And then how do you support each other? How do you pray for one another? How do you encourage one another? How can you be there for one another? It's knowing the real God, and you'll get to know the real God through his word and his spirit within you. But he really wants you to get to know him through the living Christ and the people in your group. So, let me encourage you to kind of go a little bit deeper, share from the heart, support one another. Maybe this is the week that you make sure that everyone has each other's cell phone numbers, and you text someone, hey, I'm praying for you. Or maybe someone in the group has something that's really pretty tough. And if you're leading or facilitating the group, or maybe you're not, you just feel prompted. You say, I'm going to see if I can grab lunch with this person, or I'm going to be a part of helping them get through this. That's the heart of all that we're doing. We want to know the real God, and we want to have real relationships. And then we want to grow, and we want to let him do in our lives what only he can do. So let me encourage you at the end of your time, and again, it'll be different for different groups, but let me encourage you to spend a little window of time in worship. Something I'm doing with our staff, we meet at 8:30 in the mornings to pray, different staff members. And at times last week, I just said, I want to spend the first 20 minutes of our time just adoring and worshiping God. You can read a passage or just express praise, thanksgiving, but let's focus on who God really is. And then after that, the last 10 minutes, let's bring our burdens and our requests to that God who's all-knowing, all-powerful, just, kind, forgiving. So anyway, thanks for leading the group. Thanks for being a part of the group. Keep pressing ahead. Next week, we will talk about God's holiness. Just let me encourage you, love one another. That's what the Apostle John said over and over and over. Let us love one another, for love is of God. And we desperately need it. And God is a good God, and he's for you, and he's in control.